Hello Chappets, I have the privilege of showing you today a game called Outlive. This is a prototype due to the fact that this game is up on Kickstarter right now and needs your financial support to be made into a reality. This is a 2 to 4 player game by the creators of 10 Minutes to Kill, La Boîte de Jeu, and it's about the aftermath of an apocalypse. Each player has a fallout shelter and some survivors of this kind of apocalypse. We don't know if this apocalypse was a 12 monkeys kind of thing or if it was 28 days later, and we're definitely not sure if it was a Martian invasion of some sort. But anyhow, the players have to control and maintain their shelter while sending scouting parties up onto the surface to recuperate items and objects and resources to keep them alive, and also to repair equipment and build more rooms, and the player with the most points at the end of the game is the winner. Now, for me, the theme is very much like Fallout Shelter meets The Last of Us, but the gameplay itself is more Euro style and feels, again, maybe Istanbul meets Agricola. Now, if that sounds interesting to you, keep watching this video, or if you want to jump straight to the Kickstarter, I'll leave the Kickstarter link up here so you can click on that and go there. But let's get a closer look at the table and I'll show you how the game plays. Each player takes a shelter card, like so. They'll also take the colour which matches, and as you can see, I am the red player for a change instead of the green player. You will take your red cube or your coloured cube and you will put it on the radiation tracker here at 0. At the end of the game, if your radiation is high, you will lose the amount of points which is indicated in the box of your radiation. You can also keep the radiation very low and gain points, which is a plus. You will have your 4 scouting parties. There are 2 level 3s, 1 level 4 and 1 level 5. I'll explain that a bit more later on. You will then receive 3 of the generic rooms which all players shall have, and you will place them on their not constructed side. This is indicated by this number 3 in the cog, which means that I need 3 resources to construct this room. Once it's been constructed, you turn it over and then you can place people in it, and once the room is filled up, it will activate the power marked on the top there. And also, if you have 1 person in it at the end of the day, you will need to pay 2 food resources of any of the 3 types there. So you will put those 3 generic rooms on the left hand side. You will also receive 6 advanced rooms at random, and you will choose 4 of them and again place them on their unmade side up. Now you will get to choose one of these rooms and actually construct it for free at the beginning of the game. So you choose one, you turn it over like so, and you will also receive 4 survivors, and you can place these survivors anywhere you wish. You can place them in the airlock, or you can place them in the room that you've constructed. As I said, if the room is filled with all the people, the spaces in there, that power is then activated, whereas the airlock is more important for keeping the radiation down, and you'll find out a bit later on. And you will place your people like so. You'll always fill up the first line and then later on fill up the second line. Players will also receive 2 random leader cards, and they will have to choose one of these to be their leader. And so I've chosen Swifty here, and I will recuperate the resources that she starts with, which is 2 microchips and some ammo, and I will place them in the appropriate rooms. And she also has a starting equipment of a bow, which at the beginning of the game you found, but it's broken and it needs to be fixed. And to fix it, you'll need to pay the resources marked up on the top right hand corner, and once it's fixed, you'll get the bonus. When you've got any equipment which is not when you found it and it's broken, it will always go on the left hand side of your shelter, and once you've constructed it, you place it on your right, just as a good indication of if it's active or not. And now we're ready to send out our scouting parties. Here is the main board, and it's a big circle of places, from a forest down to a fun fair, to a cargo ship, to a mine. Okay, and on your starting card, your leader card, it tells you where you put your teams at the beginning of the game. And as I said, each of them has a number on. That's the strength of them. So maybe there's 5 scouts in this party, whereas there are only 3 scouts in this party. So I will then place these scouts, depending on my leader card, in the zones where depicted. And they can be in any order that I like. I can put the 5 here or there, it doesn't matter. But as long as I put it so it's face down so nobody knows what number is there. The other players will do the same. And now we fill up the board with all its resources. There are 4 zones on the map which provide resources for you. The forest provides wood, the fairground has some microchips, the mine has some metal, and the army base has ammunition. There is also this dam here, and you're going to need a microchip to access the computer in the dam to get purified water. You can't just drink any old water in this world, unfortunately. Purified water is the best. And then you will fill these spaces with the allocated amount of resources. So depending on the number of players, in a 2-player game you would have 6 wood in the forest, but in a 4-player game you'd have 10. Now these are not the only resources in the game. There is some seaweed up at the army base which is used to counter radiation. There are wildlife, weird mutated animals which roam the forest, the fairground and the mine. You will take a number of these animal tokens, depending on the number of players, and place them randomly in each of those zones. There are also 2 cities in the game. There's an East City, which has a pile of tokens, and a West City, which also has a pile of tokens. And they contain resources randomly, and they also have some empty surprises for you. Now that's a surprise. Next to each city you will place 3 random items which you can also collect from the cities. And last but not least, the cargo ship has some survivors that you can pick up. And it also has a first player token that you can pick up. And the final thing to set up is this event track, which keeps tabs of which round it is, and also has these event cards on them which will cause carnage for you and your pieces on the game. Okay, you'll take this deck, you'll randomly shuffle them and then place 6 of these cards face down on each of these spaces. And as each day goes by, one of these events will be revealed, and at the end of the day, this number here with the radioactive sign will tell you how much radiation will leak into your shelter unless you can clean it out with your airlock. The game plays out over 6 days. Now don't worry, it's not 6 real days, but 6 in-game days. Each day is broken down into 3 phases. You will have your dawn phase, which means that you will replenish all the resources on the board as needed, apart from the animals. And then you will also turn over an event card which will affect all the players. In the day phase, you will activate all of your characters, your scouting parties, collecting resources and maybe doing a little mischief with the other players. And then in the nighttime phase, you will concentrate on your shelter. You will be building rooms, repairing equipment and feeding your people, and maybe a bit of dusting here and there because you know how shabby these shelters can get. So in the dawn phase you will replenish all the goods on the main board, but that's already done because this is the first round. And so what will happen is you'll go to the event track to mark your first day, and you will turn over the first card. And here we can see that there's enemy clans, and they're making an attack on players' shelters, all the players. Okay, so every player will have to lose 2 mineral resources. So that will either be the chips, the wood, the metal, or the ammunition. Otherwise, if they don't have 2 to lose, they have to kill off one of their survivors. Now, this event will stay in play throughout the game unless a player can resolve it at the nighttime phase. And to resolve it, you just pay the resources marked on the bottom here, and then you get to keep this card and get the points. If nobody resolves it, this happens again at the beginning of the next dawn phase as well. So that stays there. And now we go to the day phase. The day phase takes place on the main board here. In this phase, players will be choosing one of their teams of scouts and moving it to another location to pick up resources. The first thing you'll have to do is decide who the first player is. Now that's easily done when you look at your leaders. You'll look at your leaders and you'll look and see that they have an age, and the player who has the oldest leader will be named the start player. Let's say for this example, yellow is the start player. They will choose one of their 4 teams and they will move them either 1 or 2 spaces. I could say move, or I could say deplace. So let's say the yellow player here, for example, he wants to move this one here. Now he can move them 1 space to the city, west, or 1 or 2 spaces to the forest. Or they can move 1 space to the cargo, or 1 space or 2 spaces, to the mine. But there are some restrictions. You cannot move your piece onto a space where you have a team already. So in this case, this yellow team here can either only move to the cargo ship or move to the forest. Okay, so the yellow player decides that they're going to move this team here to the cargo ship. Now you reveal the number marked on your character. So in this case, there are 3 people in this team, which means that I will place this on the number 3 here. Okay, that means that nobody else can go here, and I have to stand them up as well to say that that team has activated. I will immediately recuperate 1 tinned good and add that into my camp, and I will also recuperate 1 survivor, and I can place this survivor anywhere in the fallout shelter that I have. Now this is the only time that you can place a survivor anywhere in your shelter. Now if anyone else wants to go to the cargo ship, they will have to have a piece which has 4, 5 or more. Now how can you have more? I'll have to show you a bit later. The other thing about the cargo ship is the first player that goes there will take the first player token, and then when nighttime comes they become the first player until someone else takes this away from them. Next, it's the blue player's turn. Now he's going to move one of his teams, which is the team at the dam, and they're going to move him to the forest. They reveal the number, which in this case is a 5. So there's 5 people in this team and they go into the forest. Now there are 2 things that they can do here. They could just recuperate 5 pieces of wood from the forest, which means that there's only 5 left. So if anyone else goes there, they might not have much chance of getting wood. Or he could go on a hunt for this animal. Now this mutated animal is pretty strong. It's a number 6. They go up to about 7 and they start at 3. Okay, so he could hunt this animal, but his team is only a level of 5, which is unfortunate. But luckily his starting equipment allowed him to have 2 ammunition. Now you can add the ammunition to your number. So in this case 5 plus 2 would equal 7. So with the strength of 7, the blue player manages to kill this animal level 6. We don't know what kind of animal it is. It could be a deer with 10 antlers or something like that. Okay, and then you will recuperate 4 pieces of meat because it's the first time that you've hunted this animal. If I'd already hunted a number 6, I would get the next value of meat. I would get 5 meat, and if I've hunted 3 of these number 6 beasts, I will get 6 money, and so on and so on. And it's the same for each animal. They're all different types, and you don't know what they are until you've hunted them, and you don't know where they hide, so that makes thematic sense. So let's say that that blue player, with his team of 5 people, used 2 ammunition to kill this animal of 6, and they recuperate the 4 food. What happens there is 6 minus 7 leaves 1, which means that the blue player has 1 action left, and so they recuperate 1 piece of wood. This green player is the next one. He's going to move this team of 3 1 space here. And he has a choice again. He can either search through the rubble here, or he can take one of these broken items. So for 1 action, he takes a broken bow and then places it on the left hand side of his shelter. For 2 more actions, he takes the top 2 tiles. And as you can see, there's an empty surprise, an empty cupboard of nothing, and then he finds some rations. Now you place these tiles next to the city to say that's what you found, so people can calculate what's left probably to find and rummage through in the city. And again, this guy should be standing up to say that he has activated. Next up is the red player. They're going to activate this team here of 5, and they're also going to go into the city. What happens when there are 2 active players in the same space? Well, there's a little bit of mischief that goes on. The red player has just moved here, and he's going to apply some pressure. This is a free action that they can do. He's going to apply a little bit of pressure on this team of 3. Okay, so what's going to happen is he's going to kind of like do an attack, so to speak. And successfully, he would recuperate 2 resources from the green player, because they have 3 in their team, they have 5 in their team. So the green player could submit and say, okay, yeah, take 2 resources. Or the green player could retaliate, and the way to retaliate is to just use some more ammo. So I'd have to use 2 ammo to make my team of 3 a 5. So it's 5 contra 5, which means peace. Then the red player will do their actions as normal. They will have 5 actions, so they could take 5 tiles, or they could take 4 tiles and 1 object, etc, etc. Back to the yellow player. The yellow player decides to place this team 2 spaces here at the dam with a number 4. They pay 1 chip from their resources, and they recuperate 4 water because the team size is 4. If you ever get to a location and there are no resources, obviously you can't take anything. And let's say that this red player here, he moves 2 spaces to the military base. It's a number 3. For 1 action, he takes the seaweed. The seaweed means that you can lower the level of radiation at your shelter. There are 2 actions left, therefore he takes 2 ammunition. So let's just recap a tiny bit. The number marked on the bottom of your playing piece is the amount of people in that team. That dictates how many actions that you can take on your turn. Ammunition is used to augment that number, but only in certain circumstances. If you're hunting, you can use ammunition to augment your number of people to give you a easy victory, and then leave some actions left for you to recuperate resources. It can also be used only in defense if someone's putting pressure upon you, which, be fair, is fair. And it's not fair if someone attacks you with 10 bullets and you've only got 3, and which means you've got to give up a lot of your resources. The only other exception to using ammo is to get to the number 6 space on the cargo ship. That is the only exception to get that 1 space higher. If you have only 3s, for example, and the 3 space is already taken, use an ammo and make your team a 4. Once players have activated all of their teams, that signals the end of the day phase. You then put these guys to sleep so nobody can remember what number is where, and then you move on to the nighttime phase. The nighttime phase happens all in the shelter, and there are 6 steps that will have to be gone through in order, and they're all listed down on the side here of the shelter sheet. Starting with the start player, you will do the first step, which is solving the event. So the start player will have the choice of having to solve a event or many events if there's already a loadout on the board. To solve an event, you just pay the resources marked on the bottom of the event card, and with that you get to keep this card and it will give you the points at the end of the game. If the first player decides not to solve it or cannot resolve it, it then passes to the next player and the next player. So at the end of the first step, the event is either solved or not. The second step is providing commodities for the survivors. This is a simple case of looking at the rooms that have been built and if there's survivors in them. So in this case, we have the airlock, which has 2 people in it. In this case, what will happen is you will need 1 water for these 2 people. Now let's say, for example, there were 3 people in this room. I would need 2 water. It's basically a water for each row in the airlock there. In regards to the rooms, if you have at least 1 person in a room, you will have to pay the resource. So in this case, I would have to pay either 1 water, 1 canned food, or 1 fresh meat to keep this person alive. If you don't have the resources needed, unfortunately, you will lose people. So for each commodity that you're missing, you lose 1 survivor. So in this case, let's say like this, I pay 2 water and I pay 1 fresh meat. The next step is managing the radioactivity. Now, as I mentioned with the event sheet, there is a different amount of radiation which seeps into your shelter, and this is also marked on the airlock here. So in the first round, 1 piece of radiation seeps in, and then the second round 2, all the way up to the 6th round there'll be 3. So at the moment we have 3 people in our airlock and it's the first round, so 1 piece of radiation seeps in. But you have 3 people here, so 1 person will counter each piece of radiation which comes into your shelter. So in this event, I don't get any extra radiation. But if I had no survivors in there, I would have to take the 1 radiation, like so. The 4th step is recruiting some more survivors. You can recruit a survivor by just spending 1 of the commodities, either water, tinned food, or fresh meat. So in this case, I could hire 5 new people. If I did, say, let's say I hired 2, they immediately go into the airlock. Okay, as I said, there's a restriction on when you get a new survivor, where they go. They normally go in the airlock. This will then put kind of a limit on the amount of people that you can recruit on a turn. Because once the airlock is filled up, nobody else can move in. So it is just 1 commodity for each survivor. The next step is you can construct rooms. This is a simple case of just spending the resources to build the room. So in this case, I could spend 3 to build this room. I could spend 3 of the metal. I could spend 1 metal and 2 chips. Or if I had any wood, I could spend that. So at the case of that, I could just do that and then flip that over. After you've built a room, you can move people around like so. And that will activate the powers on the rooms. So like in this case here, it says 4 bullets, which means that I would get 4 ammunition as soon as I filled this room up with 3 people. And the last step is to repair any items that you've found. So I had this bow here, and as you can see, it requires 2 wood and a metal to be repaired. And once it's repaired, it will go on the right side of my bunker, and it'll mean that whenever I go into the forest, whenever I do any action in the forest, I will receive 1 fresh meat. And you're not limited to just fixing 1 piece of equipment. You can fix many pieces of equipment, because for each piece of equipment that is fixed, it will give you a point at the end of the game. Again, they have these little half symbols. Now, if you can join them together and they work together, so like this access card and this jerry can, so there we go, we've got a matching pair there, that will be an extra point. So I'm looking at 1 point for the access card, 1 point for the jerry can being fixed, and then the 2 together, that gives us an extra victory point at the end of the game. And the very final thing that you'll have to do in the shelter, which is not actually printed on here, is clean up your shelter. So you will remove all your fresh meat that you have, but you can keep as many of the canned goods as you wish, and you can conserve a maximum of 2 of the water tokens. All the rest will have to go away back into the reserve. And then you'll move on to the next day, starting with the dawn phase. Back to the dawn phase, what you'll do is you'll replenish all the goods up to the level marked on the board for the amount of players there are. Add some survivors. If someone has taken the seaweed, then you replace it. You will take the city tiles which have been discovered and then mix them all up and then make some new piles. Again, depending on the number of players. Obviously, if some of these were missing, you would just mix them up and then take out the extra tiles that you don't need. And lastly, you replace all the objects around the side with 3 more new ones for each city. And back at the event track, we can see that nobody resolved the first event that happened. So this event applies. So each player will lose 2 materials from their shelter or ammunition, otherwise they lose a survivor. And then you also turn over the second event as well. And this second event is robbers. And what this does is it decreases the amount of chips in the fair. So if there's 10 chips there at the beginning of a 4-player game, you remove 4, so there's only 6 to start with at the beginning of every round, as long as this card is there. And as the game goes on, more and more events will turn up, and they will block things, they will make things harder. Events will be solved, and that way it'll be easier, and people will be getting big points or small points depending on what event they solved, and so on and so on. After the 6th day and the 6th night, and you've done all the events and stages in the shelter, that's when everyone will start counting up for the final score. Scoring works like this. You will get 1 point for every survivor in your shelter. You will get 1 point for every piece of equipment and item that you have repaired. You will get a bonus point if, when you match the 2 symbols together, they match. You will also lose points or gain points depending on how much radiation you have on your shelter. You will then also get points for the amount of rooms that have been constructed and are full up with survivors. Now this scoring depends. If you have 1 room done like this, you get 0 points. If you have 2 rooms, you get 1 point. If you have 3 rooms, you get 2 points. If you have 4 rooms, you get 4 points. If you have 5 rooms, you get 7 points. If you have 6 rooms, it's 11 points. And 7 rooms would be 17 points. Wow. And then finally, any events that you have completed, you will get the points marked on the top of the cards there. So there you go. That's the final scoring, and obviously the player who has the most points is a radiated loser. Is the winner. So very quickly, I'll give you a quick summary of my impressions of Outlive. The game is a medium weight kind of Euro game, but it has this very heavy thematic kind of Ameritrash theme on top, and it works really well together. After the first round, the game becomes easy to play. You don't really need the rules at all. You just naturally flow and move pieces and then do your shelter, move pieces, do your shelter. Very simple to learn. There are different roads to victory here, quite a few. You can always go for the events, so you're just collecting resources and getting the event cards, because they are quite pricey and they do give you some good points at the end of the game. You could go for the equipment and build lots of equipment and then get combinations which mix together, which give you those bonus points. You could concentrate on your shelter and just build and build rooms and populate it and get lots of special powers, which maybe help you get extra resources to help you get more items or repair stuff or complete events. There's a lot going on, but it plays relatively quickly. It's about 30 minutes per player, and again, your first game will go quite slowly as you get used to the controls and what can do what. There is a nice bit of player interaction where you're taking resources from a space and you might leave nothing for someone else. Again, with the city tiles, when you're searching through the city, it's a nice indication that you see that you've got all the goods and there's 2 tiles left. They're probably empty cupboards, which is really fun to leave for someone. Again, when you're hunting animals, you can get some nice combos together if all the numbers come up that you want at the right time. And again, you might just like leave lots of 7s on the top, which makes it harder for other people to hunt them, which means that they have to spend their ammo. Knowing when to go to the cargo ship and get the first player token is essential as well. It's a tactic that you're gonna have to weigh up for yourself. And again, managing your food is a very, very delicate thing. The game has a good amount of interaction, again, in regards to putting pressure on the other players. And again, that kind of like, I know that that's a number 5 and that's a number 4 there, and I'm gonna put some pressure on you. And that kind of bullying kind of aspect of the game makes this game a bit interesting. If I have any niggles about this game, it would probably be that the resource tokens are too small. But again, that could be changed eventually when the Kickstarter actually is funded and has lots of money. Another little niggle that some people might find annoying is the dawn setup. Every day you have to put the resources in and you got to count these little tiny tokens and you go, oh right, we're missing 4 there. If you're not into that, like in Agricola or Caverna or things like that, yeah, that might bug you as well. But apart from that, a pretty good solid Euro game. So there you go. If you like the sound of this game and the look of this game, maybe you should go and back it. It's up on Kickstarter right now. Go and click on the link. There are 2 different versions of this game. There's this basic version which has wooden meeple and cardboard tokens, but there's also an upgraded version which has plastic figurine teams and also plastic individual food and wood stuff. So go and check it out. Also, if you want to show your love for me, go and check me out on boardgameseverybodyshould.com. And if you've enjoyed this music that's been playing eerily in the background, you should go and check out my CD that I've released called Last Night from The Balance of Power. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Hey, you! Do you like playing board games? Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? So do I. So let me tell you a little story. Long time ago, before XCOM and Techno-Go, there was a game called the Settlers of Catan. I think you know. The game gives me nightmares in my sleep. The thing that I remember is a beep, beep, beep. When someone rolls a 7 and summons up the thief.